This episode is brought to you by Disney's Mufasa, The Lion King. Get tickets now for the ultimate family holiday movie experience. Reunite with the characters you know and the untold story you'd never expect. Witness Mufasa's rise from orphan to king and see how the legendary villain Scar got his name. Disney's Mufasa, The Lion King, in theaters everywhere this Friday. The kingdom awaits.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Skinny Pop Popcorn. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Oh, so light and crunchy. Skinny Pop Original Popcorn is the snack you've been searching for. Made with just 3 simple ingredients: popcorn kernels, sunflower oil, and salt. Snacking never felt or tasted so good. Perfectly popped, endlessly delicious. Give yourself permission to snack and pick up Skinny Pop Original Popcorn today.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is Daren Dochterman.
And this is Ashley Miller.
And we are the inglorious
Treksperts.
And welcome back to special guest Robert Meyer Burnett, straight from the observatory. He's back for another holiday countdown. Welcome back, Rob.
You know what, Mark? It's just, there's got to be some kind of time dilation here because it seems like years just become days.
Hours could seem like days.
It's true.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I got to tell you, it's been a couple of weeks now since our first episode, and already the hate is pouring in. Not the hate. I shouldn't say that. The hate. It's not about the hate. But people are not as mad as they were about space Nazis. But a couple of comments. I noticed, how could you not have Year of Hell on the list of time travel episodes? And I got to be honest, I think that episode is way overrated. I think what people love about it is that it takes place over a year and that the Voyager gets the shit kicked out of it. It's like what the show should have been from day one. But it has the reset button. And by the end of the 2-parter, everything's back to normal. And the whole thing of it existing outside of time. And I don't dig it the way other people do.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you. And it's been a while since I've watched the episode. I remember really loving Clarence Boddicker in that episode. When the scene when like Janeway and 7 of 9 show up and he's like, bitches leave. And that was awesome. But what I don't remember about the episode is at the end, do they remember like what happened in it? Or is it
I know I do, unfortunately.
Just reset?
No, I think it's all reset, isn't it?
Because
Spock just dances to the ship going, forget.
I feel like Rob's right. And that's why I was kind of really appreciated where it wanted to go in the first place. And then ultimately didn't kind of go there with it. Because I think if it felt like it was like if it was like, oh man, now all of a sudden we're going to get into like other episodes that might get filed under other categories. But let's just say that it's not unprecedented in Star Trek history to have a story where a character goes through an experience that maybe didn't actually happen, but they remember and it has an impact on them.
But that's it's a 2-part episode.
Yeah.
And it's such a big event episode that it as a science fiction concept, it would have been better if they had remembered it. And that I don't know if Star Trek was at a point in its life where it was ready to do something like that, but it was in the later 90s. I mean, you already had the serialized Deep Space Nine running. Yeah. I think they should have at least done something a bit, because one of the things that I think really damaged Star Trek as it moved through its life, especially during the Berman era, was the casual use of time travel. Mm-hmm. It became a ridiculous crutch that now resonates, and it's made the whole Star Trek everything about Star Trek is a mess because they wouldn't commit to the idea that there is one, dare I say it, sacred timeline.
It's so true. Yeah. That's so true. It's interesting because, and I think the person was joking, at least I hope they were, when they said Time's Arrow. Of course, for those of you joking at home who don't know, that's the episode with Mark Twain. And he's very upset that Data and Guinan are conspiring. And he's gonna get to the bottom of this.
Although I will say this, and I would be remiss if I did not throw this in. The Vidians.
Oh, here comes the David Mack book again.
I'm telling you, not just today, it's 3 books. It's the end of the Star Trek litverse. Made those aliens the most dangerous aliens in the entire Star Trek continuum.
Even I'm bored of this show now.
Great.
The survivors. They were in the book, the Dakota thing. They were the great.
Dakota book is great. They're great.
We got to start saying we need some new shit. We need to say some new things.
Those books are only 2 years old, man. Come on. What's up?
Okay. The one thing I do feel that the person had a point, by the way, and I the fact that none of us picked this for an honorary mention, at least, is kind of a missed opportunity. Yesteryear.
Sure. Yeah. Fair.
I think that could have easily made the list.
Ichea.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's another Guardian of Forever episode. It's another Guardian of Forever episode. And I feel that while it's obviously the best episode of the animated series, I think it's a riff on what they already did. It's literally the same story with different details as City on the Edge of Forever. I kind of
would disagree because I think they used it to tell a really great character story. And obviously the whole idea of Spock's pet, having to euthanize his pet, but also, which is a really, potent message, obviously.
It is. It's
rather
great.
than see it suffer. And then also, I think that, the fun of Spock not existing in that timeline and the Andorian first officer, who's also not a dick. He wants to help Spock, even though it means non-existence for him. So I like that. That's some cool stuff. I don't know if it belonged on our list, but it was some cool stuff.
No, it's a good episode. I just think the Guardian, I don't know.
Yeah. Look, we only have 10 slots. Sometimes we miss some. It's okay.
No, we never. These are definitive. We miss nothing. We are 100% accurate every time. And if you disagree, you're allowed to disagree, but you're wrong.
Then the hell with you.
The hell with you. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So those are some of the comments about the time travel, which kicked us off a couple of weeks ago. But today, in our latest episode, this is episode 4, we're doing Deck the Trek Top 10 Trek Holodeck episodes ever. Top 10 Trek Holodeck episodes ever. Now, the holodecks become an important story point of later Treks. I don't think you'll be seeing a lot of the original Star Trek on this list, which I'm sure some people will be happy about, knowing where our true alliances lay.
I'll be sitting this one out, folks. No.
Darren's done. See you guys next week. But Darren, before we get too deep into the woods, I mean, it's not entirely accurate to say that TOS isn't represented in a holodeck episode, is it?
That's correct. It is not, because, of course, in the second season of the animated series, episode 3 of season 2, The Practical Joker, they introduce what they call the recreation room before they came up with the classy title holodeck. It does what the holodeck does. We find Uhura, McCoy, and Sulu in the middle of a forest, and they fall into a hunter's pit, and then they climb out, and then they wind up in a snowstorm, and it's very scary, where they might freeze to death, and then they wind up in a hedge maze. And 2 red shirts open the door and free them. It's interesting.
It's a series of Led Zeppelin songs.
It's pretty great. They played with this idea, I think, without realizing its actual ramifications for the universe of Star Trek.
But what's so interesting is it did presage the holodeck malfunction episode.
Yes.
You know, like the first time we see it in the animated series, it is the granddaddy of all holodeck malfunction episodes, which I think is kind of interesting, you know, given that's how it was utilized in that episode. It's not a great episode, but it is an important episode.
I think they should have continued the holodeck malfunctioning episodes with Majel in the background giggling. I think that would have made everything different.
That's funny. It's interesting, too, because what we see is, you know, the original show presaged so much technology that we now take for granted, you know, sliding doors, cell phones, audio response, computers responding, you know, tablets, all that stuff. And then, you know, later shows have not been as good. They've just extrapolated on what the original show did. But, you know, a lot of people give Next Generation credit for sort of being the granddaddy of VR, saying, oh, the holodeck. But again, this is something that was in a Gene Roddenberry show. Again, an original, you know, series with Practical Joker. So even that anticipated VR, which is pretty extraordinary.
What I have to say that, you know, I have a love-hate relationship with holodeck episodes myself, because I think that it became a crutch. You know, the same way that maybe time travel, anything that the writers could do to get off brand, to do something where they could use the holodeck, because it was an easy way in the original series when our characters would go to a new planet and beam down somewhere. With the holodeck, they could go into some different environment and they didn't have to leave the ship. And then you could use standing sets. You could go onto the studio backlot. You could do whatever you wanted to do. And it just got to the point where how many times, why the holodeck appeared to be one of the most dangerous things on a starship. Why would they leave it on? Turn that sucker off. It happened. There are too many times when things went wrong, and I always ask myself, why do they keep this thing here? Mm-hmm. It seemed like any alien infiltration would happen. Some AI would use it, and it was just a room. Just lock the door. Don't go in for a while. But that never happened. Just lock the door to the holodeck. Make it like McDonald's ice cream. It's always out of order.
It became such a. They don't have blasters.
It became such a staple of Star Trek that even the imitators, you know, sort of joined in, because, you know, if you look at something like The Orville, which is a show I really like, they also had their equivalent of a holodeck. Yeah. So I mean, it was something that caught on. And, you know, now in real life, you can sort of experience that with like the Apple, what is it? The Apple Pro? Vision Pro. Yeah. 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 I think when the price.
Sorry.
No, I think when the price comes down on that, I think I'd like to get it, if only to watch Unification.
But I mean, also the holodeck had so many interesting real world applications. Like sometimes they would use it, like when Leah Brahms, the episode where Geordi, you know, recreated to fix something, not to, you know, get busy with her. That's what you do in Quark's holodecks, or holo suites. But the thing was that they had so many real world ramifications, and the idea of the holodeck could have been used in very interesting ways, but they always took it one direction. It had to malfunction.
For example, I mean, and this is actually like my really real world application. You know what I would use it for? If I was going to send an away team down into a hostile situation, and if I had time to plan, before I sent the away team down, I would recreate everything in perfect detail on the holodeck, and I would run drills with the away team, like on the holodeck, before we sent them down into the actual scenario.
That's interesting, Ashley, because that's what they did in Chain of Command.
Yep.
If you remember,
that's right.
Before they went to you know, infiltrate Cardassian, and it is something that's very typical of the military. I mean, it's like when the military is going into a new situation, like, you know, to kill Osama bin Laden, they built a replica of you know, the where he was living, of the compound, to practice, you know, and that's very common. A lot of military, you know, if they're going in for like a special forces or a SEAL team kind of thing, they do that. Now, wouldn't it be interesting if you could do that in VR and not have to build these elaborate Hollywood-sized, you know, recreations of a town or something?
Well, Worf also using them as his training program, going in there and that stuff makes total sense. I would love to have seen more interesting, like as a medical program, if they're scanning someone's body and something's wrong, you could literally walk into a holographic representation of someone's, you'd literally be inside their body seeing what was wrong with them and how can we fix it and what do we have to do, which would have been really, go Fantastic Voyage or something.
Well, Dr. Chappell could do that. What was it? The 2 micropumps right there?
The osmotic micropump.
Yeah, the osmotic micropump.
I don't like it when you call it the micropump. It's kind of judgy. Look,
you have to live with it, okay? Just get used to it.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, in Generations, they were so proud of themselves building the stellar cartography set, right? And then in Voyager, they also had like a stellar cartography kind of thing for 7 of Nine's lab, but it really should have been the holodeck. It should have all been holographic, right?
Right. Why do you need stellar cartography? You simply create the holographic program and you stand there.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's one of the things that, thinking about the future, you start to wonder that wouldn't the best way to command a starship is be in a holodeck out in the midst of the universe, right? And you point to where you want to go and the ship goes there, You have a direct connection with the ship and you can view everything the ship sees. And it's a direct human connection.
That's so interesting. And that is such a good observation. Of course, you being an art director and a concept designer, that you would think visually in those terms. The problem is Star Trek is so slavish in terms of following in the tradition of just doing, the copy of a copy, the Xerox syndrome, we call it, just copying what's gone before. What was so great about the original Star Trek was it was reinventing the wheel. We had never seen this stuff in sci-fi before. And what you said is really where, if you're going to do Star Trek in the 31st century or whatever, that's what it needs to reinvent the paradigm in a way like you just suggested, where it doesn't bear a resemblance to the bridges we've seen and the usual engineering that we've seen in the past. I wonder
if there would be an opportunity to visit the future of Star Trek, maybe, 900 years after we're used to.
Well, no, I think that it should just be exactly the same, except all the warp nacelles just kind of float.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the way to go.
Okay. But also, they did something like that, by the way, in Prometheus. Prometheus had that which I really enjoyed. But also, the you could run tests and theories and all different kinds of things. The holodeck should be constantly in use by different departments on the ship.
Well, there should be tons of holodecks for every department.
Yeah.
They should be ubiquitous. They should be standard device for everyone to use.
It's so interesting that you mentioned Prometheus because, whatever you think of the movie, I think it was Arthur Max's production design.
It's beautiful.
It is extraordinary. The ship is so beautiful in that movie. And, and there's that great scene where Michael Fassbender is watching Lawrence of Arabia, but just everything about that ship is so interesting. That's really what, Star Trek should look like now.
Well, that was the big, I think, going 1,000 years in the future into humanity's future, how unimaginative that future is. Mm-hmm. It'd be like saying that it looks, aside from the color palette and the untethered warp nacelles, people look exactly the same. There's been not much change, and you could attribute it to the burn, I guess. But there would be 1,000 years before where we are right now, humanity looked very different than it does today.
It's way less attractive, for one thing.
It's interesting. There is a direct parallel to the Dune prequel that is on right now. This is supposed to take place 10,000 years before Paul Atreides, and it looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
I don't understand. What are they doing?
It's so funny because, we've been, accused of being, old and out of touch, right? When people are upset, are upset that, we speak plainly and speak honestly. when they feel that,
I speak
we should
in
be what
complex
Ashley
lies.
calls a test pattern Trekkie and fawn over everything. And what's interesting is it's like we don't want something. We're doing the exact opposite. We don't want something that's like what we've seen before. We want something that's so much more ambitious and is different rather than just trying to imitate what's come in the past, because then it's what we had. Again, the Xerox syndrome, a copy of a copy. It loses every generation.
That was an episode of the original show, the Xerox syndrome.
Resolution. I think that was the episode of Mad Men where he writes the Star Trek episode.
Oh, yes.
It's like we want it to be more daring. We want it to be more original. We want it to take more risks. We want it to take that. That's why I think we love, at least speaking for me, and I think this is true of most of you, love the 78 Galactica for what it is. Mm-hmm. And we love the Ron Moore Galactica for what it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they're two totally different
things that give joy in different ways.
Yeah. And it's great because he took what he liked about the original Galactica and jettisoned the rest, and then invented all this great new mythology and everything. And it's wonderful. So.
And added hot Cylons.
And they have a plan.
That too. They said they had a plan. I'm not sure they did have a plan. Sure. Rob, did they have a plan?
No.
Don't spoil the ending for me. I still don't know what happened.
No, they didn't. And they'll even admit, the writers, Ron, and I'm sure David Icke will admit that it seemed cool when they first said it. Like in the miniseries.
Right.
Are you listening to Ashley? It's 20 years. It just celebrated its 20th anniversary. He still hasn't watched the end of it. Like, I haven't watched the end of Friday Night Lights. That's forgivable. But you haven't watched the end of Galactica at this point.
I cut off the connection because I want to touch the creator.
You know what, though? I find the end of Galactica, the new Galactica, quite moving. A lot of people don't like Daybreak. I think it's incredible.
I do, too.
Plus, it's got an extended, the 3-part ending is it's great. You should watch it.
I love Daybreak too, other than the Starbuck arc, and I'm not going to talk about that because I don't want to ruin it for Ashley.
Although moments are great. And there's really interesting ramifications. What I really liked about Galactica, even though this isn't about Galactica, I love the fact that God, or what could be considered God, is a character in the show that you just never see. But you see the results of the actions of whether it's a deity or whether it's the monolith aliens like that were in Unification. Who knows?
Well, just don't talk about that episode where Kirk becomes a woman, because Ashley hasn't finished it yet. And he doesn't know what happens in the last episode of Star Trek. We don't want to spoil it for him.
I stopped his turn.
He detransitions. I'll spoil it for you. He detransitions.
Oh my God. Boy, that feels like a segue into the top 10 list, doesn't it?
Okay. So we got 10 great holodeck episodes. And we're going to reveal our top 10 list as soon as we return after these brief commercial messages. So stay tuned as we begin our countdown.
What's up, y'all? It's Joe Budden, here to talk about Prize Picks. Football season is heating up, and Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action while watching football. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. The app is really simple to use. Pick 2 or more players across any sport, pick more or less on their projection, and you could win real cash on your lineup. Prize Picks even invented the flex play, so you can still cash out if one of your picks doesn't hit. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match players from different sports. Real money sports action while watching football.
Download the Prize Picks daily fantasy app today and use code FIELD and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code FIELD on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
So, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write 1 million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Okay, we're back. And we're counting down our top 10 Trek holodeck episodes ever. And to start us off at number 10, it's America's Sweetheart, Daren Dochterman.
I would like to be sweetheart in other parts of the world as well, just letting you know.
Well, I'm just saying Shatner's sweetheart, because he did call you sweetheart on your tour.
I let him call me sweetheart.
You let him. You do what he says. You do what Shatner says. You don't tell him. He tells you.
That's right, sweetheart.
In the third season of The Next Generation, I believe it's episode 21, we get to meet a heretofore unseen crew member who is, let's say, he's a little bit on the spectrum. He has difficulty dealing with human beings and being a normal, quote unquote, member of the crew in the episode called Hollow Pursuits.
Next time on Star Trek The Next Generation, a serious accident releases highly toxic chemicals.
Begin evacuation of secondary hull.
And contamination ignites a chain reaction that's tearing up the Enterprise.
Controls are not responding, sir.
Now the crew faces destruction at breakneck speed.
We can't shut it down, Captain. She's accelerating out of control.
On the next exciting episode of Star Trek The Next Generation.
We meet Reginald Barclay.
But if you need him, and you can find him.
And you can find him.
You might be able to hire Reginald Barclay.
I get a new starship. Murdoch, it's crazy.
I love it when a holodeck comes together. The role is played with great facility by Dwight Schultz, yes, from the A-Team and other shows. But he is... he, I think, is the closest to a surrogate for some viewers, I think. That, some people have difficulty with personal contact and communicating with real people. They prefer to be in their own little dream world. This is basically a version... your microphone is off.
I was just saying, and we've met a lot of them,
Oh, yeah.
Well, we've met a lot of them.
This is no aspersions on anybody, but we understand because we were like that too once. But this is a...
Big for yourself.
I did. This is basically The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which, if you're familiar with that film, and it's a book, actually, but it is Walter Mitty can't deal with reality. He subverts himself into his fantasy land. And Barclay, while being a very brilliant crew member, has this crutch called the holodeck. Will you put your book away?
Really? I'm just trying to brush
your golden
up on,
book about William Shatner.
Brush up on William Shatner.
Oh my God! Okay. You don't need to brush up on Shatner. You know him. You know him well. But Barclay, also known as Broccoli occasionally, he is a brilliant holodeck programmer, actually, and we discover with the crew his fantasy land. And he has members of the crew represented in very different ways in his holodeck fantasy, including Counselor Troy as the goddess of empathy, and Commander Riker in a shorter stature version of himself. It's great. Reg really comes alive when he is on the holodeck.
Just like Frampton, like Frampton. Just like Frampton. Man, I blew that joke. Yeah, just like Frampton, it would have been great alive.
Just like Ensign Frampton. He becomes the hero.
Can you just say that again? Just say it really comes alive.
No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to give you an opportunity to edit all that and make you sound great.
No, I wasn't. We don't edit. I just want to hear it come out properly. Okay, very good. Carry on.
Barclay becomes the hero in his story on the holodeck. And it's really fun to see. It's really fun to see him realizing his potential that he has not learned to bring into the real world. And it becomes a very serious question of the, as Roddenberry would say, the enormous power of illusion and the power of the holodeck to create fantasies and make them reality. And it's always been a long-standing theme in Star Trek to challenge those ideas. And this is an excellent representation of that.
I just want to say about Dwight Schultz in general, and also with regard to this role. I think we've talked about this before, but in the TV biz, in the TV writing biz, we talk about actors who sometimes act their way onto shows. They're guest stars who come in for a one-off, and they make such an impression on the writing staff. The character just leaps off the screen in such a way that they take on a life of their own, and they just come back and come back and come back. And in the case of Reg Barclay, he came back and came back and came back on The Next Generation. Then he came back and came back and came back on Voyager because he's just that good. And I can personally attest to the fact that Dwight Schultz is just fabulous. Cast him on DOTA as a voice, and as a voice actor, he is just glorious. He finds things in a performance that you never imagined were there. He really can bring out just incredible depth of emotion in ways that, like, if you grew up with him, watching him on the A-Team as Murdoch, you never would have imagined. But he's so terrific. He's such a sweet man. And, you know, he's I just can't say enough good things about him in this role or in general.
I loved him on the A-Team. Yeah, he's great. He's great in this as this recurring character of Reginald Barclay. But it's so funny. This is an episode that actually is a little ahead of its time. It's like he's the guy who subscribes to the OnlyFans account and thinks that this girl is like his girlfriend. Like she really likes him. It's like, you know, that Troy is like really into him. And it's so funny. That whole teaser. It's just like this poor deluded fool. It's like he's, Riker, he's kicking Riker's ass, and Troy, is just gives him the come hither glances, and, is seduced by Barclay. And it's so funny because it's kind of like he got this Paul Rubens thing going on when they come onto the holodeck and find his holodeck fantasy going on and are absolutely aghast at what he's got going, what he's cooked up, which is basically, he's basically like, I don't know, he's created this next generation porn or something. So, with the goddess of empathy. Penetration.
But that's exactly what we would all do.
Yeah,
that's what you would do, Rob.
No, it's a precursor to the world that we live in. I mean, you could say that this is one of the most forward-thinking impression episodes of Star Trek ever. Because we live in this world now, and we're not too far away from having a holodeck.
Well, that's a great point.
It's Mary Sue fan fiction, just on a holodeck.
And it's interesting because it is sort of the precursor for social media, where everyone is the hero of their own story, and that they think that their opinion is as valid as the most educated, most, specialist, knowledgeable person, in the world. It's like you can be talking to a historian who studied something for 60 years and, knows, and then the person who read something on Wiki page thinks that they know as much as this expert, whether it's on health or viruses or.
Well, but I guarantee that historian is more like Reg Barclay than we are.
Yeah. Maybe he is, but the reality is it's so indicative of the culture that we're in, where everyone just thinks, which ultimately leads us to like Strange New Worlds, where everyone's opinion is equal to the captain's, and the captain is basically being told by everybody what he should do, as opposed to actually making decisions, because theoretically he's the most knowledgeable and well-versed and educated of
somebody make the decision.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's like, it's like an enemy within, right? Where the weak Kirk, Kirk needs that. So anyway, but it is a really wonderful conceit. The teaser's great. the whole premise. And then, of course, the fact that we see Troy actually doing some counseling.
Right.
Like this, clearly Barkley needs help. He's shy. He's introverted. Like you said, he might be on the spectrum.
How the hell did Barkley get on the Enterprise crew?
Well, that's what, Riker's wondering, right? Yeah. He says, this is the best of the best. And, I don't know how you got on here, because he's late on his duty assignments.
Yeah.
And because he's playing around on the holodeck.
Well, because he got addicted to the video game, man.
He got addicted to love, just like Robert
Might
Palmer.
as well face it.
Yeah.
See, there it goes. Just like Robert Palmer, he got addicted to love. That's good, Darren. That's good. There's our references for the 50 and over set. So there goes the demographic. There goes our young demographic.
Some more.
So come on, 1980. I watched a really great documentary about MTV the other day. Just saying. Anyway, fascinating.
MTV, what's that?
Music television.
Really?
Okay, so really a great episode. And a really interesting use of the holodeck because it's not malfunctioning, but it actually, again, it's showing us, like we said, it might be, and I think, Rob, you said this, the most accurate depiction of how someone would actually use the holodeck.
Yeah. Also, it's an accurate depiction of how Star Trek fans would use the holodeck.
Right.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. And remember,
because I would use the holodeck that way.
The internet was in its infancy when this episode was done. So you didn't really have, you certainly, you couldn't conjure all the stuff up that you can conjure up now. It was kind of the kind of, stuff that Ashley was doing back then, right? Ashley, you were like on these chat boards or chatting with people.
Yeah,
like
Usenet and all that good stuff. But and even then you can see the beginnings of people getting addicted to social media and the virtual existence of that and those interactions, right? When that was all kind of new and that was all part of it, man. But it's sort of taken on a life of its own and has gone global and turned into a fucking virus. But other than that, it's great.
So all kidding aside, this is a very smart episode. Very smart episode. Introduced a really interesting new character. It's a great use of the holodeck. It's a great way to start us off. So thank you, Darren, for that. And that brings us to number 9. And Robert Meyer Burnett, what are we number 9 on our list?
This is an episode that comes from the 3rd season of Voyager, written by Ken Biller. And it's called Worst Case Scenario.
It starts with a whisper.
Are you saying there's going to be a mutiny?
Becomes a conspiracy.
Saska, what's going on? Move it.
And ends.
Let's do it.
In the ultimate act of betrayal.
You'll never get away with this.
When rebels take control of Voyager.
You'll be part of a crew that's going to do whatever it takes to get us home as fast as possible.
Can anyone stand in their way?
You've just threatened the wrong woman.
On the next Star Trek Voyager.
And it's one of those Star Trek episodes that at first things are topsy-turvy on the Voyager. Stuff is going on. It looks like there might be some kind of an insurrection going on. Chakotay is talking about how people don't trust Tuvok and they don't think that Janeway's doing a very good job. And then all hell starts to break loose on the ship from the teaser into the first act. Things aren't what they seem, but it's really interesting. And I think it's really well done. And it's really fun because you get to see the crew acting totally out of character in a way, but you're fascinated by what they're doing. And again, kind of a Star Trek trope. It becomes kind of a Star Trek trope because we know as viewers that something is amiss. And what is amiss is it turns out all of this potential insurrection that's happening on the ship is really just a holodeck program. And it is revealed that the holodeck program was actually created by Tuvok. And it was in case the Maquis crew and the Voyager crew somehow didn't integrate and what might have happened because of that. And this program, this worst case scenario program, was to game out what certain possibilities could be, which I thought was a really smart idea because to use the holodeck to game out, like what if they had it during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and you could have gamed out all these different things that might have happened.
Yeah, it's like the Whopper.
Well, thank God the X-Men were there.
Not the Burger King hamburger, the War Games.
Operation Planned Response.
Planned Response, yes, from John Badham's movie. And I thought it was really, and then of course it goes on, and of course there's malfunctions, and they're stuck, and they have to play out this. I mean, it was a way to do an insurrection on the Enterprise, an insurrection on the Voyager episode that they never got to do.
Right.
But they got to do it using the holodeck as the catalyst. So you get a holodeck episode, and you get a really interesting idea that Tuvok had in how to use the holodeck, which seemed totally reasonable. And what a great way to use the holodeck. But now, because of the situation, you get to actually see what would happen in case the Maquis and the Voyager crew did not integrate, and what a potential insurrection would look like. And they brought back Saskia and who I kind of liked, to be honest, as a character. But it was a lot of fun. I thought the episode was a lot of fun. The actors were clearly having a ball, and it's not that they're playing the evil versions of themselves, but they're playing versions of themselves if things went south, kind of. And I really enjoyed it. It's nicely directed, and the performances are a lot of fun, and it made sense. I mean, look, there's always got to be something that goes wrong with the holodeck. But what I liked about this episode was the reason that this program exists in the first place is it seemed like it was practical. What Tuvok was doing was something he would have done, and it made me want more of these kinds of things to happen. It's just that there always has to be some kind of a reason to trap people in it. So the peril is created. People might get shot because suddenly the safeties are off, and it was fun. But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed this episode a lot, even though it's kind of you watch it once, and I guess there's things you can love about it. But it's a gimmick, ultimately. It's just a gimmick. And nothing that takes place in this episode is really consequential to the characters themselves. It is to us as the viewer. It's fun to watch, but it doesn't really mean anything as far as our characters are concerned. And that is something I think is problematic by using the holodeck as too much of a crutch.
I think that's really interesting what you said, Rob, because I think War Games is a really good movie. And it's funny, I watched that documentary Bratz about the Brad Pack recently, and man, Ali Sheedy still looks great. Yes. And she was really interesting in that documentary. I highly recommend it. It's on Hulu right now. Worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is, I think, a really good episode of Voyager. And I agree with you because it feels legit. Like Tuvok, who's head of security, would come up with like a worst case scenario, trying to figure out what would happen. Probably would have been more interesting if the McGee crew had mutinied. And then, of course, the fact that Seska takes advantage of it, because it's like that technology that gets, let out of the bottle, the genie that's let out of the bottle, which is something that always happens with, technology. And, when you plan these things for worst case scenarios, sometimes it falls into the wrong hands. So even that part of it was interesting, because I love that she is menacing the crew even from the grave, right? She's already dead. Yeah. Spoiler alert, Ashley. But she's, so this has come back to haunt them. And yes, of course, you got all this third act, stuff where the safeties are off. How many times have we heard that in the holodeck? That makes no sense.
But also the idea that Tom Paris is like, I'm going to help you finish. We should finish this.
Yeah, that they all love this holodeck.
Yeah, and I love the idea that this becomes a game that everybody's playing. It becomes this popular game on the ship that people really love, and it is like how people get addicted to sandbox games today, whether it's Ghost of Tsushima or Red Dead Redemption or Grand Theft Auto, and it's fun to play out these scenarios and see what's going to happen because it'll be different every single time.
That's why I thought this was really true to the show in a sense, in that they would be bored, just going through space. And so the idea they find this cool holodeck program, and the thing about Voyager that's always so interesting is it's always more interesting when the characters are acting out of character. So in worst case scenario, you have a lot of characters that are acting out of character because it's the way they're perceived by, first Tuvok and then perceived by, Seska, and then, the holo program exaggerates all these qualities. And then, it's the same thing, in a lot of these things, like Living Witness, when, and all. So the best episodes are when the Voyager characters aren't their bland selves and are actually, have personalities. So I just think this is just a really strong early episode of Voyager, and very clever. And I wish they had done more like this.
Well, it's also funny because it shows what the show should have actually been. Like this insurrection between the Maquis, it should have happened early on to throw more difficulties at the crew, because they just dispensed with it right away. Well, now we're in the Delta Quadrant and it doesn't really matter. The caretakers brought us, so we're all going to gel as a crew. And that made sense because once the Maquis was removed from their wanting to the borderlands and the planets that were disputed with the Cardassians, why be mad at each other?
Well, and it's what you said earlier too. Star Trek leaned on time travel as a crutch. So you have so much time travel. Like the second episode of Voyager is like a time travel episode, and it's too soon. And they missed their opportunity to develop. And something like this is a much stronger episode because you get a sense like, oh my God, they're lost in space, and, space is big, and space can be, and they have to find things to do. And, at the same time, they're worried because the person that they're serving next to could turn on them, at any time.
I like the part where Leonardo da Vinci fights alongside the Federation crew. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, that was
Flint?
number 9. What?
He said, you mean Flint?
Very good.
Callback.
Very good.
Yeah, but John Rhys Davies did not play Flint.
Yeah.
Yeah, so even that was...
Or if you read the Star Trek book Federation, he went by Bric-a-Brac.
Here he goes again.
Bric-a-brac.
Bric-a-brac, what?
We're going to have Rob on to talk again about the novels. I know we did an episode on the novels, but I think we should just give Rob just 2 hours.
The top 10 Star Trek
get on the microphone.
That Rob
we'll sit here
has read.
We'll just feign interest for 2 hours.
Really? We have to feign interest? I think it's better if we don't. Oh, some friend of mine, mutual friend, contacted me. He has like hundreds and hundreds of Star Trek books that he's looking to get rid of. And he says, do you know anybody that would be interested in these? And I'm like, I know one person.
Because I had my great storage locker debacle.
Yeah. Yes, we know.
So my collection of Star Trek novels would no.
Oh, they're all gone.
Yes.
Okay, well, let me look into this for you, Rob.
Please
you might just need to cover shipping. But they're apparently in Chicago, from what I understand.
Yes, please. It's my kind of town.
But there are a couple of books in there I want for Isaac, so we'll have to discuss it. So, but he has a huge Star Trek novel collection.
Well, I don't think Isaac's going to want the novels.
No, but he has a couple of the nonfiction books.
Yeah, I don't need.
Yeah.
I have the nonfiction and the reference books.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go.
I need novels, Mark.
I know you do. He needs to mainline the novels now. Okay, well, that was number 9, worst case scenario from Voyager. And that brings us to number 8, and we return to Ashley Edward Miller.
All right. Number 8 is from the 6th season of Star Trek: The Next Generation, episode 8, and an episode of The Next Generation that's actually very important to my life. Weirdly enough, it's called A Fistful of Datas.
Data's memory malfunction turns a Wild West fantasy into a real live shootout.
My God, you've been shot!
Now, with only primitive defenses, can Worf stop a gang of murderous outlaws?
Where have they taken my son?
And with no escape, can he survive a violent showdown?
There's a gunfighter out there who has the speed and accuracy of an android.
On Star Trek: The Next Generation.
And the premise is dirt simple. It's Worf and his little Sylvester Jr., Alexander. Oh, Father, you embarrass me. They go on the holodeck to have a Western adventure, and the safety protocols get turned off, and it gets invaded by Data's programming. And the next thing you know, they are in gunfights, for their life against Data with the help of Troy for some reason. Basically, because she's there to be Commander Troy. And it's a fun episode. It's a super fun episode. If you dig Westerns, it's cool. The way that it plays with Klingon physiology and kind of how Worf solves like some of the problems with Data and the safety protocols is pretty great. It's funny. I dig it. And the reason why it's personally important is It was
because Worf actually pays attention to his son for the first time ever.
Yes, like me. It's very Cats in the Cradle of Silver Spoon. No, the reason why it's personally important is it is the first produced credit for Robert Hewitt Wolf, who became my very first boss and gave me my very first job in Hollywood. And without this episode, who knows, butterfly effect, maybe I'm not sitting here with the Treksperts. Maybe we're not doing this Zoom. Maybe there's no show. Maybe I don't have a career. Maybe my life is terrible. So thank you, Robert.
Maybe you're still in the Navy.
Thank you, a fistful of datas. Maybe I'm still in Navy. It's like, or, I could be any one of the village people. Well, maybe not any one of the village people, but
you can't be the Native American. I'm sorry.
I can, but that's all genetics. Anyway, I can be 1/16 of him. So, so there you go. Fistful of Datas is actually, it's a fun use of the holodeck of the recreational capabilities of the holodeck. And it actually uses it to tell the plot story isn't as important as the character story, as the story between Worf and his son. And that's the thing that we care about. The stakes kind of are what they are. The malfunction isn't about like the Enterprise is going to be destroyed and all this other bullshit. It's really just about how these two are going to work out the things between them, which is what I dig about it. And it's one of the few episodes where Alexander really works as a character.
And it lets Data try out his new overacting chip.
Yes, it does.
It's also got some beautiful,
super cool.
Beautiful exterior photography. They got out of that soundstage and they made the best use of it.
Yeah, but you know where they shot it? This is interesting. They shot it at Universal Studios, the same place that Quentin shot Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's Rick Dalton's Bounty Law.
Bounty Law set, yeah.
Yeah, so Data was like Bounty Law. Yeah, that's pretty cool. More useless knowledge as part of your ongoing Trekucation, #Trekucation.
Oh, God, we're back
So,
to
it's really interesting. You got two people who know nothing about Westerns. Brandon Braga, admittedly not a Western fan. Patrick Stewart, not a Western fan. And yet the tropes for Westerns are so well known and so embedded in popular culture that they deliver on all fronts.
Robert does know Westerns. And I think at the core of it, it comes from, what he originally pitched and what he originally turned in.
Yeah, but Brandon did the production.
I know Brandon, but yeah. It's where that story came from a legit place and sort of a legit knowledge of how that genre works.
No, it's a great premise. It's super fun. It's one of these off concept shows where it's like the holodeck allows us to do another genre. So you do Western and, the whole idea of Brent playing all these different characters, although I'll go with Darren. He does ham it up a bit. But it's Christmas. Fun. Yeah. And it's also one of those few episodes where actually Troy gets something to do and she's not annoying. So, I think Marina was really good this episode. I think she really embraced the opportunity to do something different. And, it's just a fun episode. Sometimes that's all Star Trek needs to be. It's a little contrived, getting us to the point where the holodeck malfunctions and, we can't get out until we finish the program, but it's no High Noon. It's no Stagecoach. It's no Fistful of Dollars, but it's a solid episode of Next Gen. And I really enjoy it. Yeah. Okay. Well, you say hello, but Rob Burnett says goodbye at number 7.
This is probably, I would dare say this episode of Star Trek The Next Generation is one of the most important episodes of the entire series for a number of reasons, but not first and foremost of which it showed the potential of what this show actually could be, in the sense that, obviously they were trying to emulate a formula, and Next Generation was it was rough going in the first couple of episodes of the series. And this episode, written by our friend Tracy Torme, and I remember, Mark, when we were writing for Sci-Fi Universe, we would go to Tracy's house, and he was such a friend of the magazine, and what a mensch Tracy Torme was. Really, really, really nice guy. Obviously Sliders was his brainchild, and he was just so nice to all of us. But this episode won a Peabody. Didn't it win a Peabody Award?
It won a Peabody Award.
It won a Peabody Award.
So did Darren, by the way.
And this is the big.
I'm not kidding. He did.
I know.
Ask him.
Did you win a Peabody Award, Darren?
I did.
What did you win a Peabody Award for?
For Star Trek.
Yeah, so there. Suck it, Rob.
Okay, well. I didn't. I just didn't know. So you learn something new every day.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I brought it up. I wasn't being funny. I wanted you to know that Daren Dochterman is the only Peabody Award winner on this.
That's amazing.
On the Glorious Treksperts.
It's a great honor. But this episode is also really interesting. Of course, it's the big goodbye.
Next time on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Ready for San Francisco, Mr. Whalen?
Captain Picard visits the holodeck for an adventure to the past.
Something's gone wrong. Everyone inside could vanish.
A mysterious malfunction threatens their journey.
This is not a game. Give me the gun.
Trapping them in a real-life murder mystery.
Shall I kill him? No. Kill the woman.
On Star Trek The Next Generation.
And it is en route to a very important summit. Picard has time, and they've just upgraded the holodeck, and he is going to take. There's a new Dixon Hill. Dixon Hill is it's a fictional character in the Star Trek universe.
You know where Dixon Hill comes from?
I don't.
It comes from In a Lonely Place. Humphrey Bogart played Dixon Steele.
Oh.
And that's where Tracy got Dixon Hill from.
Nice. All right. Well, so Picard goes into this new upgraded holodeck and gets immersed in a holo novel. And he's incredibly impressed with it. And then, of course, goes out and then ends up recruiting Data and recruits Beverly. And it's really fun to watch Beverly or to watch Gates McFadden and Brent Spiner put on these clothes, and you can't help but be reminded of a piece of the action. I know it's noir and not so much gangsters, although there's always gangsters in noir too, but it's not kiss, kiss, bang, bang, but there is, there's just something about this episode playing out this crime thriller, and you have Lawrence Tierney in this episode playing the Cyrus Redblock character. And they play out this delightful noir story that's an amalgamation of all kinds of noir tropes. But the thing that I really love about this episode is the end. Mm-hmm. When Cyrus Redblock and his henchmen, they realize what's gone on, and this holodeck opens and they look out onto the Enterprise D corridor. And they step out thinking they're going to have a whole new world to plunder, a world with all these wonders in it. And as soon as they step out, they start to dissolve because no longer can the holoprojectors keep them whole. But it takes the episode, it makes it, first of all, poignant because suddenly you actually feel for these fictional holodeck characters that have this existential moment, and then they're basically essentially erased. And it's a fun romp that actually starts to ask some really interesting questions that get paid off or at least addressed in a much bigger way later in the series. Holographic life forms we saw them in Deep Space Nine. And then the whole idea of simulation theory that you can fall down that rabbit hole with, that Star Trek didn't know about simulation theory, not really at the time. So I really like this episode.
I agree with what you said, but I think there's here's a thing that for me, I think that I would add to it. I didn't find the poignance so much in Cyrus Redblock kind of heading off onto the Enterprise to kind of take it over, right? Because that was just you.
Well, maybe poignance is the wrong word, but
no. But there was poignance to the episode, which is what I responded to. It was Picard's police detective buddy, who became essentially self-aware.
Yeah.
And began to wonder, when this program ends, when you turn it off, what happens to me? Because in my mind, I have a life, and it's real. I should have mentioned that. And what happens when I stop being real? And that's the thing that grabs me just in the guts and just twists, because it takes that episode, it takes that concept, and it just elevates it in a way that I think really great speculative fiction that, guys like Harlan Ellison, when he was really firing on all thrusters, really popularized. And it's taking the concept and exploring that science fiction concept in this really emotional, character-driven way, but without beating us over the head with it.
And also that idea of both in time travel stories and in holodeck stories will sort of be a running thread through all the Star Trek shows, at least in the Berman era, about do we exist? And they did some great stuff even in the Orville with that, with a particular time travel episode. And the idea is, what does that mean? And in what universe? And I love those questions. Very Philip K. Dick.
Yeah.
But no unicorns in this one.
No unicorns. Unicorn, no.
I gotta be that guy. I don't like this episode at all. Because not once do I believe that Picard is a fan of these books. Because he fits so sloppily into this world when he gets into it. He doesn't feel comfortable. He doesn't respond like a fan would. And I just don't believe it. And I think that unfortunately apart from Cyrus Redblock, the casting is just atrocious. The secondary characters are not good. But these are nitpicks to be sure. But I wish that I loved it as much as you do. I just can't go there.
Well, with all due respect to my good friend Darren Dochterman, I could not disagree more. It's a wonderful homage to film noir. It's a great early use of the holodeck, because this is before holodeck malfunction stories became de rigueur. I disagree with Rob where he says, it evokes Piece of the Action. Piece of the Action is a gangster, Little Caesar, Public Enemy kind of homage, whereas Big Goodbye is very much a noir story in the style of Chandler.
Yes, of course.
Maltese Falcon.
I'm more talking about the playing dress up in this particular era.
Yeah, but I mean, it's fun. And I think you got to also look and see, what do they have on the studio lot that's, easy. And, obviously for Piece of the Action, they had the back lot, the New York Street, and they had more costumes than you could shake a stick at in terms of that gangster stuff. I mean, this is a studio that made The Godfather a couple years later.
And they also did a great job. There's the great holodeck door gag walking out onto the back lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is great.
It's great.
Those transitions were really nice. The whole idea of the arch and how you would get in and out of the holodeck. Mm-hmm. I do agree with Darren. I think other than the great Lawrence Tierney, there is some less stellar casting. But again, it looks like everybody's having a really fun time. Gates is getting to play dress up and she's great. Patrick is doing the best he can with the accent, which is sort of fun that Picard, he would stumble with that. He's not a guy who's comfortable acting theatrically. It's a terrific show that really, put the holodeck to good use very early on. And, I give it a lot of credit. And obviously, Rob, I appreciate you saying all those kind things about Tracy, who passed away last year. And, we mentioned a number of times since, and, it was a real loss because, he was one of the first people to really get what Star Trek was when it was struggling in that first and second season. And of course, there's a sequel to Big Goodbye, which is dreadful, called Manhunt, which we will not speak of here. Boy. And Dixon Hill also was utilized briefly in First Contact more effectively than in Manhunt.
Yeah.
And it's sort of fun that they had the money to go to the ballroom at the Biltmore and do some cool stuff. It's a little side quest. But yeah, Manhunt is a disaster.
Also, I do want to point out that I'm sure, being that this was in the first half of the first season of what was then a 1 hour dramatic syndicated program, I don't think they would have their pick of the litter as far as great actors. Trying to cast people on a show like this.
On the new Star Trek? Are you kidding? Of course they did.
1 hour syndication.
No, they had no budget. They would pay for guest cast. I'm sure, top of show. It's not a lot. They didn't have a lot of money for that. And you see that.
The style of casting was consistent throughout the entire show.
Also, the first season, they didn't even know if it was going to go past 13 episodes.
Yeah, no. I agree with that, Rob. I think that there was a very bland casting throughout Next Generation.
But Darren's right, too. The guest stars were never Next Generation's strong suit.
No.
It wasn't until Deep Space Nine.
I mean, you got to remember, this is a show that it cost $1.5 million at the time, which even though, it seemed like a lot, they really struggled to make it work because this was a very ambitious show. And that's why you have so many bottle shows. Right. And it was not easy to produce. It's not like now where they just throw crazy money at these shows. And even then,
and time.
Even some of the new show and time. That's a great point. Even so, these shows, if you look at them, are mostly bottle shows, and they have, 8, 9, 10 times the amount that Next Generation had in its heyday.
And 8 days to shoot.
With the Canadian actor pool.
No, more than 8 days sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, Next Gen would have 7 or 6 or 7 days. These shows have weeks and tons of pickups and it's crazy.
That's what I was talking about. Like these shows had,
they had
8 days
Farscape schedules.
I think that the most shooting days they ever had on a 1 hour episode Next Gen was Armand Bashir, and that doesn't compare to what they have on these new shows. Okay, but we're talking about holodecks, so we're gonna say goodbye to the big goodbye.
Goodbye,
and we're gonna play the wedding march for number 6. It's Bride of Chaotica.
We interrupt this Voyager promo for a special presentation.
Who's that?
Wednesday on UPN. It's the continuing adventures of Captain Proton. Starring Captain Janeway as Queen Arachnia.
Ah! You're no match for Arachnia.
Thrill as she matches wits with the evil Chaotica.
Together we could conquer the universe.
Chill as she battles to stop his diabolical death ray.
Surrender!
Voyager!
And this is, again, another homage to classic movie serials, Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers. And Voyager has a lot of fun. Basically, the tech, creating a tech problem on the holodeck. And as a result, we need to get Janeway, for some reason, to become the Bride of Chaotica. And while I can't explain the interplexing beacon or the interphasing subspace aliens.
Yeah, there's aliens.
There's aliens. I know that we have to, but it doesn't matter because it's just a hoot. And it's great to see Star Trek pay, sort of tribute to its roots back in the earliest days of the serials.
Yeah, tribute to Leonard Nimoy.
And right, great point. Leonard Nimoy and Zombies of Stratosphere. And it's just a ton of fun. Kate Mulgrew is great. You have a Ming the Merciless type character, Chaotica, who's a lot of fun. And the Doctor, Rob Picardo, who has always been a highlight of that series, is just having a hell of a time as the president of Earth. And it's just really fun. And you weren't used to seeing Voyager lighten up. And this is definitely the lighter side of that show and very off concept. And I think very, very enjoyable.
And black and white.
That's right.
Which is ballsy.
Yeah, and I have to point out that the story for this episode is Brian Fuller's story, and he co-wrote the teleplay with Michael Taylor. And I think that there's a lot of great lines in this episode too.
Yeah, and
there's
I think
a lot of some funny stuff.
If you're interested in the making of Bride of Chaotica, I think Darren and I and Ashley did a Treksperts briefing room back when we were doing Treksperts briefing room with Brian on Bride of Chaotica. So if you want to check out the Treksperts briefing room season 1, where we talk about that episode.
Is it true, Mark, that Chaotica is actually based on your cosplay from Rob's wedding?
Now you're getting nasty.
Oh, God.
Wow. What Darren is alluding to.
One day I'm going to release that tape.
Oh, my goodness.
You better not. Rob, our good friend, had his wedding, and we've told the story before, so we'll make it short. It was a costume wedding where everyone came in costume except for Rob. was mandatory. And he had a sci-fi wedding
tux
at the sci-fi wedding chapel where Mr. Spock beamed in and then proceeded to get very angry at all of us for blocking the audience's view of him because he thought that everyone was there to see him. We quickly corrected him and said, no, we're here to see Rob get married, not you, some schmuck.
And I said as part of my vows, the charm of making from Excalibur.
Right.
Yep. Yes, you did. And it was glorious.
But Mark dressed as Ming the Merciless and was quite impressive.
Yeah, it was typecasting. And it was before Rob knew you, Ashley, so you missed out on the festivities. But we did discover the incredible world of Cheaters, where we watched that night after a beautiful wedding ceremony and then a reception at the Voodoo Lounge, followed by us at the Rio when it was...
Back when the Rio was new.
Yeah.
Relatively.
We went to the Golden Steer.
We did go to the Golden Steer, and we had a lovely evening, closing the evening down at about 3 or 4 in the morning at the suite at the Rio, where we discovered the hit new show Cheaters, and we're absolutely enraptured by it. I think it was a marathon, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
Awesome. So we owe Rob for that as well.
Thank you.
You won't be hearing our Cheaterspurts podcast because we can get Roger Lodge to be on it. We could get Roger Lodge to join us. Wasn't he the host on that?
No.
Who was the host?
It was, what's his name? Louis the Lilac. I forget.
Louis the Lilac. It was Milton Berle. Oh, my God. Yeah. So yeah, Rob had this costume wedding. And Darren, you were Tote, weren't you, from Indiana Jones?
No, I was a Jedi Knight.
You were Jedi Knight. Oh, Jedi Knight.
Oh. Yeah, Scott Hyman and his lovely wife came as Deckard and... Rachel?
Yeah. My favorite were the Cones who came as the Coneheads.
Yes, they did. Those were my cousins.
Our friend Steve Melching was Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man, and he presented the ring with his bionic power.
Yes, he did.
That was so awesome.
I wonder if that had anything to do with my marriage ending.
Oh, what? Steve Melching?
No, the entire affair of having a costume wedding in Vegas that we just made up.
I'm sure it didn't help.
Well, I mean, Yelena as Jessica 8 could have only helped, I'm sure.
She had her dress custom made by Trashy Lingerie, and it was a combination of Barbarella and Catherine Schell in the Guardian of Puri episode of Space 1999.
My goodness.
I would never get away with that now.
Why?
Oh, you didn't. You didn't then.
But I have to say, that was the first time we'd ever been to Golden Steer, thanks to your wonderful dad, the largesse of your father, Dick.
And now it's turned into one of Las Vegas's great. I mean, it was there for a long time, but it's considered one of their great steakhouses still. We
went last year, and indeed it is. Great service, great steak, great times. Sounds like a commercial. But we did lift our glasses and gave a toast to Dick Burnett, who introduced
that's very nice. He would love that.
In memory of Dick Burnett, who was the one who introduced us to that. And do you remember, Rob, when you did when we did the glass? Who cut themselves on the glass after we did you stomped on the glass?
I don't know, but somebody did.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I don't know if it was you or me or it was somebody.
It wasn't me. I did not cut my hand.
Yeah, somebody cut themselves on the glass. I remember that. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, this is, we talk about the old days, the old ones, the ones who made us, because they were so much fun.
They were fun. We've always had fun.
We've always had fun.
Silly Willy.
And if you take one thing from this away from this podcast,
you know what else?
Have fun.
That was one of the first places. This was actually 2000. In 2000, that place, the Viva Las Vegas Wedding Chapel, broadcast. Listen to this.
What?
They broadcast video
on
the internet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. You could watch it if you couldn't make it to the wedding. You could watch it on the internet. This newfangled invention. It was the original holodeck. Okay. Enough about Rob's wedding from 2000, 24 years ago.
Wow.
Jesus Christ. We are old. Maybe they're right. Maybe those people are on the internet are right. Maybe we are old, and
No, because we grew up with the good stuff.
It's true, and this shit keeps us young.
And
we're not done having fun.
Like Linda Hunt giving Kevin Kline the good stuff in Silverado.
That's right. We actually get out of our house, out of our parents' basement, go and do things and live life. And that's what keeps us eternally young. Okay. End of sermon. Okay. So that takes us to number 5, Ashley Edward Miller.
Number 5 is still alive. Number 5 is from Deep Space Nine's 7th season, episode 4, Take Me Out to the Holosuite.
Sisko's oldest rival, it's been a long time, challenges him to one final showdown.
We will destroy them.
The name of the game is baseball.
Strike 3!
But for Sisko,
Strike 3!
this is no time to play.
This game is supposed to be fun, not a life and death struggle.
Strike 3!
On the next Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Now, Take Me Out to the Holosuite is light, it's fluffy, it's fun. It takes place right in the middle of the Dominion War, and dogs and cats are living together in sin. All hell is breaking loose, all that good stuff. But the show finds a moment to take a breath and just let the crew play baseball. Baseball, Ray. And what's great about this episode is that underlying all of it is about the power of baseball to bring out the best in all of us as part of a team. Whether as individual team, right? Whether as individuals, we can run, throw, or catch or not. It's how we come together that matters. It's how we weather challenges that matters. And it pits the crew of Deep Space Nine and their assorted friends against a completely Vulcan crew that is captained by a rival of Benjamin Sisko, Captain Solak, a Vulcan captain. And it pits his very sort of controlled, logical approach and his very ordered way of doing things against Sisko's very emotional and emotive way of leading and kind of being in command. And one of the things that I most appreciate about this episode is how it deals with Rom, who is just the worst baseball player of all time. And everybody rallies around him. Even though Sisko, whose competitive nature, he wants to win so badly, he's ready to kick Rom to the curb. But he kind of faces a mutiny from all of Rom's friends who are like, no. If you're not going to let Rom play, then we don't want to play. Right. So that's a great bit. And it helps Sisko, I think, get back in touch with the thing that connects him to his crew in the first place. The other thing that I love is Odo kind of throwing himself into the role as the umpire in the game. Maybe throwing himself into the role maybe a little bit too much. Renee Auberjonois is just hilarious. It's kind of understated, but it's fantastic. And the moral of the story is it doesn't matter if you win or lose. What matters is how you lose and how you win and who you are at the end of it. And it's a delight. And I can't recommend it highly enough.
Yeah, it's the only one on our list that actually has Holosuite in the title. Right. So how could we not nominate it? Because it actually says that it's a holodeck episode.
Well, it does. There is Hollow Pursuit.
Oh, I never got that.
Jesus Christ, really?
It's spelled HOLLOW. So I thought it was shallow. I didn't think it was like hollow in terms of.
Well, it is.
It's a double. It's a double entendre.
Oh, right. I didn't get that.
Yeah.
They should have named it every day. HOLO Pursuits.
They should have, huh?
Holo Pursuits.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Holo Pursuits.
I guess I missed the boat on that one. Guess I'm not as smart as I think I am.
No.
I guess I didn't get Trek-educated.
You just did now.
Look, Take Me Out to the Holosuite is great. And one of the things I didn't appreciate at the time, because I wasn't a huge fan initially of how Enterprise depicted the Vulcans. I was one of those people like, how can they depict the Vulcans this way? This is really,
Me too.
A terrible thing. But you see the roots of that in just the arrogant we're superior to you, and take me out to the holosuite. And what I love about it, and what you just said, Ashley, is you see Cisco being a complete dick. He wants to win so bad. This guy's got under his skin. He's a jerk to Rom. He's a jerk to everybody who can't play. He has no tolerance for them. It's like, okay, but by the end, he comes around and realizes he was being a dick. And then he kind of, apologizes. And the whole thing is there's a joy in not winning, but, having fun. And that's great, because now it'd be you wouldn't let a captain act like that, because he's not setting a good example. Oh, he's so, that's such a 21st century thing where he cares about winning. No, everybody should get a trophy. We don't care if we win. We just, are gonna, treat everybody. It's but no, in the getting caught up in it all, you do lose your temper. You do want to win. And I think it's great. And I love the stuff shot on location at the field. Yeah. And you're right. René Bourgeois, the umpire, is just great. And the fact that he takes it so seriously. And again, that's character, because he's the same way as a constable that he is as an umpire. Mm-hmm. And it's just such great writing. And you're right. It's in the middle of all this stuff going on with the Dominion War, but it doesn't feel like filler. It actually just, it feels like they need to blow off the steam, and it's a really fun episode. And Armin is a secret weapon in it, as Quark as always. Yep. And I just love it.
Even if the Vulcans are just a bunch of pricks.
As always, Darren, the sniper, comes in. It's fantastic.
Yeah, again, it's nice to see them get out on location.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's always something fun to see our principal cast wearing something other than their traditional garb.
Yeah. Although the TV producer, me, always goes when they say, let's get rid of the crowd. It's right. We only have the extras for one day. So let's get rid of the extras, because we can't afford to have them out here for multiple days of shooting. And it's just I'm always okay, well, there you go. We that was the line producer in action. But it's okay. It doesn't hurt the show at all. Nope. It's just, it's really funny. But if you build it, they will come, and they came. It's a great episode. Okay. And that brings us, we're not going to get very far. We're going to stay in the holosuites at Deep Space Nine for number 4. It's the espionage thriller homage. Look, we'll say it. It's an homage to James Bond. We know what they have to say. Oh, it's also in Flint and Our Man Flint, and it's Matt Helm, and it's James Bond. Let's face it. And it's a wonderful James Bond tribute. It's such a wonderful James Bond tribute that United Artists threaten them, if they ever do it again, they'll sue them. And Our Man Bashir is, again, it's one of these off-concept episodes that really, it's just the execution is so wonderful.
You know his name.
Bashir. Julian Bashir.
You know his game.
I'm a spy.
But when Bashir's fantasy
Charmed
crashes into reality,
whatever you do, don't end that program.
The stakes of play become life and death.
I don't have time for games.
Diabolical. Visionary.
On the next Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
And it plays into the tropes of a Roger Moore and a Sean Connery Bond movie so well. And it's so well written and so much fun, and everyone just plays their part. I mean, Nana Visitor is sensational as the Russian ingenue, and then of course you have brilliant Ashley. Ashley, you're brilliant too. The brilliant Avery Brooks as Dr. Noah, and what was it? O'Brien is Raven or something as the henchman. Just it's so much fun, and I love it. It's a great episode of Deep Space Nine. It's wildly enjoyable, and you can see the love that went into making it from every department. They went above and beyond. Art department delivers, casting, costumes, makeup, and of course, the writers just really deliver a crackerjack episode.
It's nice when the cast and crew get to have fun too.
It's Deep Space Nine and beyond. They did. Ashley, what do you think of Armand Bashir?
I think I need to turn on my microphone. No, I love Armand Bashir. I think that I love the names. Mona loves it. I mean, Dr. Noah. I love how over the top Avery Brooks is. I mean, and like, it's just, he's so over the top. Even things that are over the top are like, wow, that's over the top. I mean, it's just sort of, everybody is having such a great time. But I think the secret weapon in the episode is really just the relationship between Garak and Dr. Bashir. Because you always feel like there's just this part of Garak who's sort of sitting back and just sort of watching all this and is both amused by it and entertained by it. And at the same time, it's like he's trying to teach Bashir something about the real world, something about what he really does. I mean, it's just one of those things that DS9 has always done really well. Like, no matter what, and I think why their holodeck episodes have tended to work. It's these characters are already real three-dimensional characters with interior lives in ways that the next generation, I think, very often lack. Yeah. And they don't forget that at the holosuite door. When they walk into these simulations, into these programs, those stories that they interact with are still about who they are. And they always find a way to wrap it back to what are they dealing with in the show as a whole? What's happening with them in context while still having fun? And I think that's why Armand Bashir is such a triumph.
Yeah. And I can't say enough good things about the great panel at Star Trek Las Vegas our friends at Spy Hards did with Ron Moore, Ira Bear, and Robert Wolf talking about this episode, Scott and Cam. I don't know which is which, but they were both great. And if you want to hear our panel from Star Trek Las Vegas, you want to check out our friends at the Spy Hards podcast who did a magnificent job interviewing them. It's a great episode. It's like a bonus episode of Treksperts. It feels like a Treksperts episode, but it's not.
But it's not.
And in fact, I actually prefer it because I don't have to do any work. I could just sit and listen and I don't have to worry about it and I could just enjoy it. So I really recommend, if you haven't listened to it, check out the Spy Hards and Armand Bashir. It's a great deep dive into that episode. And speaking of taking a deep dive, we're going to return to number 3, getting down to it, with Daren Dochterman revealing our number 3 pick for the top 10 Trek holodeck episodes of all time.
Well, early on in the Next Generation, in the first season, the 15th episode is one that no one can ever remember exactly what the title is. But it is, you can, yes. But
well, you're special.
It is 11001001.
I'm on Star Trek The Next Generation. The crew docks at a star base for repairs.
I'm getting an indication of possible trouble in main engineering.
But kidnappers trick the crew into an emergency evacuation. Abandon ship, stealing the Enterprise and its captain.
This vessel must not fall into hostile hands.
Set auto-destruct sequence. Now.
It's a deadly countdown to disaster on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Which in binary is what?
How the hell? What do we know?
No one knows.
What do you mean no one knows? What do you mean nobody knows?
What do you mean nobody knows? Deck officer! Deck officer!
Now you're crushing the streams.
The story goes that apparently the Enterprise D needs an overhaul of their computer system. Now, I don't know why this would happen. It's a brand new ship. Why would it need an overhaul of its computer system?
Well, because you don't know her a tenth as well as we do.
Well, they installed Windows, and it was just a disaster.
It crashed. They need to clean it out.
It crashed. Yeah, we needed a new computer system. So we dock at a starbase at a space dock that is apparently 4 times the size of the space dock we saw in Star Trek 3.
Oh, my God.
And they
Here
didn't
comes
change
railing
any
on
of the
space
windows.
dock again.
But it does lend us some beautiful views of the D docked inside space dock and a lovely matte painting where we can see people walking out the gangplank and everything. It's really well done. But,
it's like an aquarium where you swim with the sharks. You walk through that tube and you see space around you. It's cool.
Space sharks.
Space sharks. No, it's Realm of Fear.
So we are on the Enterprise with Riker stayed aboard, and Riker stayed aboard, and several other people are on the ship, but also these strange aliens that we have meeting for the first time. The Binar.
And the last.
Well, who knows?
Well, okay, never mind. I won't get into it.
The Binars are much in the tradition of Star Trek.
What book were they in, Rob?
Females
No,
playing.
No. It's books and comics. Just saying.
Are you gentlemen done? No?
Well, we know the plot. We want to hear what Rob has to say.
No. It's I want to hear Darren. I like listening to him.
I like giving a little bit of backstory and telling the plot to people who may have not heard it or seen it.
Okay, and then Rob, when he's done telling the plot, you got to tell us what the Binars were in.
Yeah,
because I want to know.
I don't know.
The inquiring minds want to know.
The Binars are short, played by females, and they have male voices.
So it's they got that idea from.
Grand tradition of Star Trek aliens. They finish each other's sentences. They are very sort of robotic or computerized in their movements. Perhaps they are in fact computerized themselves, but they are overhauling the computers on the Enterprise. Or are they? We learn that the Binars are doing much more than that. And we see the ramifications of it as Riker takes some time off and hangs around the holodeck and goes to a sleazy bar where Riker always goes. And he plays his trombone and he picks up a woman. And it isn't the first woman that he picks. He goes through a series of them because he wants to get one just right. And he picks a woman named Minuet. And she turns out to be the perfect woman for him. She's attentive, she's smart, she's beautiful, and she's exactly what Riker is looking for in his off hours, if you know what I mean. So he has a relationship with her, and we learn that maybe her existence is closely related to what the Binars are doing. And it's a fascinating story. It's very packed with science fiction and intrigue and romance. And it's a very fun episode where we spend holodeck in a bar.
Space Catfish. That was the original title.
Holodeck in a bar.
Oh, that was Space Catfish. I mean, I will say that even though it was like space catfishing, that Minuet is just a great character, honestly. Yeah. I kind of loved her, man. And where I think this episode truly comes alive is in the relationship between Riker and Minuet.
100%.
That it's like he feels more real as a human being in this episode than he has in any of the previous episodes. I think
certainly any time that he spends with Deanna.
Or literally, yes, for sure. Or literally anybody else. I think it adds layers to his character. You can just watch the two of them together, like all the time. Like his love of jazz, like just feels so organic and natural to him. And it's one of those things where like you want her, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but she's the kind of character that you would want to come back in some way. But I think, this era or this point in time dealing with the holodeck, I don't know that that's anything that they would have necessarily thought about. But Deanna had a hard act to follow, and I don't know that like she ever really did. I think that was Riker's one.
The fantasy character was better than the real character. Having is not the same thing as wanting. We talked about the big goodbye being a sort of light in the tunnel of the first season. But if you remember when we did our episode a couple of seasons ago about this first season really suck, and we sort of realized it doesn't. That there were there were a lot of flags being planted and a lot of interesting things,
including Riker's.
but this is really where you feel the show turn, and you see the potential that Next Generation had in 100101 was 00111101.
By the way, that's the name of the 4 binars in the episode.
And which is why I can't remember it.
You said no,
but it's terrific. It has that cool space dock that Darren hates so much, and it has that great twist at the end, that great reveal. It has that, and what's so interesting is this whole thing comes from the fact, because they were writing stick figures and they were writing the Star Trek Bible up until this point. And Maurice Hurley, to his credit, is another guy who doesn't get enough credit. It's easy to piss on Morris, but he actually went to, a lot of the cast, specifically Frakes, and said, tell me about yourself. What do you like? What would you like to see in Riker? He said, well, I like, New Orleans jazz. I play trombone. And to his credit, he wrote that into the show. And suddenly Riker actually has a character. He has interests. He's not just sort of this, Captain Kirk wannabe sort of second banana. And, it did a world of good for that character. Yeah. And of course, the whole idea of this episode, illusion versus reality, it's not something Star Trek has dealt with before. But do we fall in love with the fantasy as opposed to the reality that they create this illusion? And it's such an interesting premise. And the sci-fi catalyst is really interesting. And the payoff is really interesting. It's a terrific episode that I think time and time again we've pointed to as a real zenith of the first season, and a glimpse of what Star Trek was going to become in the golden era.
I just want to point out, they did appear in a book, Starfleet Corps of Engineers, but most importantly, they appeared in Lower Decks, and they teamed up. They teamed up with Nick Locarno, and Beckett Mariner even says she dated Bad Bynars.
But
Bad Bynars. Is that like Bad
Bynars? And Beckett Mariner points out that when Nick Locarno teamed up with 2 Bynars to take over a ship and create mischief, she knew it wouldn't work because Nick Locarno and 2 Bynars equals 3.
And you could have said no. Wow, that's Mike McMahon, man. You gotta love Mike McMahon.
Wasn't Bad Bynar the name that Flint went under in one episode?
And there were Bad Bynars, by the way. They weren't Bad Bynars. There were Bynars that served on the Voyager A in Prodigy.
That was like the Canadian Voyager, right? Voyager, eh? I'm sorry.
Oh my God. Terrible.
It's so bad. It's funny though.
Yeah.
It's better than Frampton Comes Alive, let me tell you. No.
Take off. Hey.
Good. Hey. That was a good one. Okay. And that's a great episode. I think we can all agree that's a great episode. And a really great way to use the holodeck, because again, it's not a malfunction. It's being used
in
a plot specific purpose.
She's enhanced.
Right. Although that's
as a distraction. I mean, it's literally being used to keep people, to not know what's going on.
The only thing that's weird about it is that he goes back
talking about espionage
because he's, addicted now to Minuet. And then, once the computer has been emptied out of their, planetary computer, she's like, just a pale shadow of what she was. But of course, that's the only time when we've seen the holodeck where a character is that bland and like a video game character, a video game avatar, as opposed to like a really fully fleshed out, character. But we can forgive its trespasses because it's a great episode.
I have to say, her casting, Minuet's casting was great casting.
Yeah.
Carolyn Seymour was great, and of course, she would come back.
She did.
You know what? Just one little observation about this episode that I think is interesting in the context of all of the other holodeck episodes we've talked about. In every single one of them, there has been, I guess not taking out policy. There's some malfunction, right? Or there's some larger stakes that are surrounding everything that's going on. And I guess that's sort of here. But in this episode, it's not about a holodeck malfunction. And there aren't really any large dramatic stakes, right?
The fact that somebody's stealing the Enterprise.
Well, I mean,
it's
but in terms
big dramatic stakes.
But in terms of Riker's relationship with Minuet, it is just about Riker's relationship with Minuet. And the reason why it works is that it's just about his relationship with her. And it's like, it's not coincidence that it's happening, like in the context of the Enterprise being stolen, but it's not the reason the Enterprise is being stolen. And I think you just took those scenes outside of that plot and you played them, they would still work.
They're not stealing the Enterprise. They're just borrowing the Enterprise.
The computer.
Hard drive.
Because you might have said no.
Yeah, but they are stealing a weapon of mass destruction. So there is some stakes there. When they take the Enterprise. And you know what it needed? It needed that guy from Star Trek 3 to come back and say, someone's stealing the Enterprise again. It could be like
Mr. Adventure.
He's like 70 years older.
Admiral Adventure.
Yeah, now he's Admiral.
He was eventually promoted.
Yeah. And it was just like, because we all love Star Trek 3 so much.
Again, I do think it's one of the great episodes of the first season of TNG.
Absolutely.
It's one of the great episodes of TNG. No caveats. No season 1, 2, 3. It's one of the great episodes of Next Gen.
Yes, agree.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic.
Good.
Well, that brings us, we're so close. Because right now we're at number 2 and Rob is bringing us a message in a bottle.
A miracle turns a fictional character into real live flesh and blood.
As far as I can tell, he's real.
According to the laws of physics, this is impossible.
But this new life form possesses a criminal mind.
I'm afraid I had no choice but to take control of your vessel.
And his ruthless power puts the entire ship in jeopardy.
Unless we move to a safe distance, this vessel will be destroyed.
Next time on Star Trek, The Next Generation.
Yeah, this is a very interesting episode because not only does it have Reginald Barclay in it, it is a sequel to season 2's Elementary Dear Data, which, if memory serves, is the first episode that Rob Bowman, young Master Rob Bowman, directed in TNG. He went on to direct Q Who.
That is not correct.
True.
It is an episode he directed, but it was not his first episode.
Not his
first was Data Lore.
Oh. There you go. I was thinking that I wasn't.
Memory does not serve because you're old.
Let me give you an addendum to that. In the first episode, he directed in the second season.
Yeah, okay, very good.
We'll take that.
Yes.
By the way, I want to point out that Rob has forgotten more about Star Trek than you know. So
I'm just saying, third episode, second season.
I mean, like you listeners. Yeah.
This, first of all, one of the things that I interviewed Rob Bowman about that episode, and he was blown away by the set they built for him. He did not direct this episode, however, and Renee Echeverria, Renee Echeverria wrote this episode, and this is interesting where it revisits Geordi and Data going into the Sherlock Holmes holodeck program. And they go in there, and Reginald Barclay was not assigned to the Enterprise when Moriarty, they had their first run-in with Moriarty during the second season of the Enterprise D's mission. And long story short, Moriarty is self-aware and more powerful than he's ever been. And here you have a holodeck character in Moriarty who knows there's a universe out there, and he wants to be a part of it. And Daniel Davis, once again, comes back. Another great character actor, tearing it up as Moriarty, bringing him back. And also, he has a love interest in this, played by the lovely Stephanie Beacham, who is also delightful. And, again, this idea of artificial life, I mean, call it what you want, but I would say that at this point, Next Generation, Moriarty is a new form of life. Well, there it sits. So you can't say that. I mean, if Data's life, why can't Moriarty be a new kind of life? And like so often when an artificial life form, what do they want? More life, and Moriarty is doing what he needs to do to try and leverage. He wants to live. He wants to live life, and he wants to. So he has a plot, and machinations happen, and he's doing everything that he can. He's going to take over the Enterprise. He's going to do whatever he can to live, essentially. And it's a really interesting episode, and it almost looks like he gets away with it. Like he's going to And it's surprising as you follow this episode through to its ultimate destination. And it turns out that
its logical conclusion.
He's been tricked. And he's been tricked. And while Moriarty thinks that he is succeeded in his plan to leave with his lovely lady, he's actually been tricked, and he is living now inside a simulation to never victimize the crew again. Well, until Picard season 3, where they brought back Daniel Davis to play Moriarty one more time.
I was so convinced he was going to be the big bad of that season. I was so pumped. Moriarty's going to be the villain. This is going to be great.
I think he was. I think the actor was too.
I mean, that would have been fucking amazing. Look, I think that the episode is incredibly well constructed, so well written. I think incredibly well directed. It just hits on all cylinders, man. It's like it doesn't miss a trick. And I think the most impressive thing that it does is it manages to posit, one of the smartest villains in the history of literature. And it finds a way to outsmart him in a way that does not diminish him.
Yeah.
That is an achievement. And it's an endlessly entertaining, rewatchable episode. Daniel Davis is he is fantastic. And it's why we got so excited when we saw him in the trailer for Picard season 3.
Yes.
I mean, it was neat to see him. It would have been, I think that they could have figured out a way to integrate him more into the plot. I mean, I know I like the way they used him, but it would have been interesting if somehow he was on the villain side of things.
Yeah.
Because if you look at one of the things I liked about
the Legion of Doom.
Well, Picard season 3,
the Borg, Moriarty.
But I like the idea of these bad bitches teaming up to get exact revenge on the Federation. I like Vatican and the Borg Queen because they both had been horribly wronged by the Federation in wartime, and they both had grievances.
And the bad Beinards.
And it would have been interesting if it was Moriarty who figured out how to put the two of them together.
This is part of what makes Star Trek fun, because we're all big fans of Picard season 3, but it's the what ifs that always make it fun to talk about. Like, well, what if this? What if that?
Yeah, totally.
That'd be cool.
Well, look, if the Next Generation, I mean, it's so funny because in the films, everybody's always chasing their Khan, right? Who's their Khan? And Moriarty would have been a perfect Khan.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
It's if there was any character that you would reach back and go, that's a guy to bring into the movies and be somebody that you could go up against, that's the fucking guy.
How cool would that have been? I would have taken that over Tom Hardy as Nemesis.
There's your opening pilot for Legacy.
Yeah.
When they do the Legacy series, Moriarty comes back.
They're not doing the Legacy series. Stop making people think that this is going to happen, right?
Just kidding, man.
You know as well as I.
If they did a Legacy series, they would not make him the big bad.
Just as an aside, I want to mention a couple of books that I'm into deeply right now.
More with the books.
Books
Star Trek books.
Books are good.
Are they Sherlock Holmes books?
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has written a series of books about Mycroft Holmes.
Yep.
And they are brilliant. And, who would have guessed from co-pilot in Airplane?
He was a writer on the last season of Veronica Mars.
That's correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
But it's so great, and I'm delving into the audiobooks of them, and they're awesome. So,
and by the way, that's why nobody wanted to play the Veronica Mars intramural.
We should get him on Deck 78. We should talk to him about his books.
Yeah,
and about playing, being in airplane.
Yeah,
Roger Murdoch. About, Bruce Lee.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about everything but basketball.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
He'd probably love that.
Yep. He probably would.
You know what these guys generally do? Well, when you talk to them about stuff that is not what everybody always asks them about.
We'll work on that for 2025.
Damn right.
Yeah. Rob, you'll have to come back. It's like when we had Vinny Ken Wall on. You'll have to.
That was one of the highlights of my life.
That was so great. By the way, I just want to point out this great meta quote from this episode where Picard says, "Who knows? Our reality may be very much like theirs, and all this may be an elaborate simulation running inside a little device." I love the meta nature. That's a lot better than what are we on, some kind of Star Trek? So, because what they're saying is basically this little holodeck that he thinks it's his reality, but he's really inside a ship in a bottle, and they're musing on the nature of that. And of course, while you're watching the show Star Trek, where they are also in a ship in a bottle, that is this TV show. And it's terrific, and I love it. And I think this is super clever because Elementary Dear Data was all about style. It was about that set. It was about Rob Bowman's direction.
Let's stop talking about that.
Yeah, that's true.
That may pop up later.
Okay. But Ship in a Bottle is a really brilliant premise. I love what you said about our characters being smart. Picard was really smart.
Yeah.
Smart wins. Smart wins. It may win in drama. It apparently doesn't work in real life, but it works in drama. And it was great to see him be smart.
And again, like you pointed out, Mark, if you start delving into simulation theory, it gets a little crazy. And this episode alluded to that before it really had language to. I mean, this was, after all, 34 years ago or 30 years ago.
And maybe we are living in a simulation. Because we go on, and Darren's like, I really hope they have the profiteroles. And then they have the profiteroles. And it's like, are we in a simulation? Is this all Darren's dream? Is he the boy from St. Elsewhere?
Maybe
we don't
life
know.
is a dream.
And the worst part is we could be down 28 layers from base reality. A simulation of a simulation of a simulation of you never know.
Yeah. And in this simulation, we're about to reveal our number one pick. But before we do that, let's do our honorary mentions. As soon as we return from these brief commercial break, we'll be back with the final honorary mentions and reveal our number one pick for the top 10 Trek Holodeck episode ever. Stay tuned. And we're back. We're back, baby. We're back. And it's time for honorary mentions. This is where we pick episodes that could have been on the list, and but weren't. These are individual picks as opposed to groupthink.
Right.
So we're going to start with Robert Meyer Burnett and his pick for honorary mention.
Can't believe I'm going to say this, but of all the Star Trek spinoffs, of all the modern Kurtzman era, I'm going to pick a first season Star Trek episode called Kobayashi. Episode 6.
Wasn't he in The Usual Suspects?
Was he? He might have been. Or was he even real? No, we do see him. We do see him in reality, not just in the story that Kaiser Soze is telling. So yes, Mr. Kobayashi was in fact real. But I mean, okay, this is a blatant fan service episode of Prodigy. It's shameless, and I can't, it got me. All right, it's fine. I get it. Let me see who wrote it. It was Aaron J. Watke who wrote Watke. Is it Watke?
Yep.
Watke who wrote this episode, and of course, you have the Kobayashi Maru scenario played again and again and again out in this episode, and in the holodeck. And it's a lot of fun. Dal and Jankum and they get to pick different crew members, and they get to pick different people they come up against and use, and it's fun. I mean, I
think what's great about Prodigy is you see writers who really love Star Trek, and the show really honors the tradition and the history of Star Trek. Obviously, it's very much tethered to the Voyager mythology. But to pay homage to these characters and these actors who have passed away, like Leonard, like Renee, I think it was a wonderful thing that Prodigy did. It's a wonderful tribute, and it's a fun episode. And again, anytime you have people who are doing new iterations of Trek who are not just using old Trek as a crutch, but paying tribute to it in a respectful way, it's great. And this is certainly a case of that happening.
And I do like the people that were best at the Kobayashi Maru scenario. Noyeta Uhura, Beverly Crusher, Odo, and Spock.
Yeah. And it was interesting the way they did it using pre-existing dialogue rather than finding sound-alikes.
Right. Yep.
So it really nice. Aaron is obviously somebody who loves Star Trek, and obviously the Hagemans. Prodigy was a real love letter to Star Trek, and there's a reason it has such a fervent following among passionate following because there's a lot of respect and love for Star Trek in that show. Okay, and that brings us to Ashley Miller and his pick for honorary mention.
I'm going to go to a well that's very related to the well that Rob just drew from.
Did he fall down the well?
Yeah, I fell down the well, just like that little kid. Whatever happened to her? Season 1, episode 9 of Star Trek Lower Decks, Crisis Point, in which Mariner casts herself as the villain Vindicta in a Star Trek movie, which is really all about her working out her issues with her mother, the Captain Freeman of the USS Cerritos. But it's also a wonderful tribute to Star Trek films, both visually and in terms of like the music and just the ways that it reminds us of all the things that we like about this. It makes it larger than life. It makes it a little bit silly, a little bit funny in the way that Lower Decks does. But in the best tradition of Star Trek and the best tradition of the holodeck episodes, it tells us a real story about a character who has to confront her own shit and realize that half of her problems with her mother are really her own. And maybe there are some things that she needs to do differently, and she can't just be the villain all the time. It's really well written. It's really funny. It's really well done. And I love it. And Mark's microphone is
off, Mark.
He is muted. He is muted.
Wow, that's really professional. I'm really glad. Wow. And see, we don't cut this stuff out, so you can listen to us as we engage in amateur hour theatrics. Okay, so next it's Daren Dochterman with his pick for honorary mention.
All right, my pick is sort of 1 foot in the universe of Next Generation and 1 foot in the universe of original series, and I have to pick this episode that the holodeck isn't necessarily important in, but it does play a very important part to us fans, and that is Relics. When Captain Scott is feeling lonely and slightly drunk, he goes to the holodeck and asks to see the bridge of the 1701. No bloody A, B, C, or D, and he walks onto the set of This Side of Paradise for a few seconds. It's really a lovely moment to give Scotty a remembrance of adventures past, and we get to see Picard on the bridge of the Enterprise. And it's really a lovely moment. And what better way to use the holodeck than to go back to places that we love? And that's one place that we love. And it's really nice to see him on the show enjoying himself the way he does.
Great. No, I agree. I mean, it's such a, even though it's not the catalyst for drama, it does help. It's such an important part of that episode. And he's sort of showing, Geordi, how he's misunderstanding Scotty and Picard having the opportunity, and it just honoring the history of Star Trek.
Who do you think gave it to Guinan?
Also using the holodeck in another interesting way. People recreating past times of their own past or memories that they want to revisit. And how great was it that one moment when he first steps onto the bridge of the Enterprise again?
It's wonderful.
Yeah, and for those of us who saw it in first run, it was the first time we saw anything like that.
Yeah.
Really, other than the mention of Spock, and then I guess there was unification. We saw Spock. There wasn't a lot of allusions to the original series. I mean, this is the first time. Imagine to step through there and find yourself lost in another world. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. And I think that it was a real treat for us fans of the original series. And it felt very true to the character as well. So I think that's a great pick for honorary mention. So my pick for honorary mention, we mentioned a few things like Elementary Data. Again, I think it's really well done from a production point of view. It's not a very interesting episode. I mentioned earlier First Contact. Again, a brief moment on the holodeck that's really cool, but does it warrant being on this list? Probably not for its use of the holodeck. So my pick for honorary mention is the original Star Trek set tour in Ticonderoga, New York.
Oh my God.
This is a chance. This is close
Not
to the
an
holodeck.
episode.
It's not an episode?
It's not an episode.
But it is a trip through time. We are recreating the past in a way that emulates what the holodeck does. Are you saying that it shouldn't count?
I admire the spirit behind your pick, but it's bullshit.
Wow, that's harsh, man. You're shitting on my truth.
I rise in support of his statement of
I've got to say it's
my
BS
truth
too, man.
This is my truth, and you're being disrespectful, and it's giving me trauma.
Your truth?
Okay. No, not
stupid.
really.
I'll tell you something about your truth.
Yeah.
It's wrong.
Oh, well, in that case, I better change my pick. Okay.
It's not a holodeck. It's real.
Because I'm so upset over the fact that you diss me and diss my pick. I'm going to go with an episode. You're not even going to know what it is. Rob might. Nobody else is going to know. From Next Generation, it's Homeward.
Oh, God.
The original Insurrection.
That's pretty funny.
That's amazing.
It's basically the plot of Insurrection for those of you playing at home.
Except they gaslight everybody into playing. Go ahead.
Yeah. In which Paul Sorvino stars his worst brother.
I was going to say Paulie, man. That's one of the greatest casting coups ever.
Paulie Walnut, not Paulie Walnuts. Paulie from the Goodfellas.
And when he turns his back
Dave
on
Rossi.
you, it means something different to Worf.
As Dave Rossi. That's really funny. So Darren just said it. Paul Sorvino was playing Dave Rossi in that episode. But basically, the holodeck, again, it functions a really interesting way because it's not a holodeck malfunction. It brings up the ethics of kind of using the holodeck to transport a civilization and violate the Prime Directive, but for the greater good. And and is that something that we should really? And it gets Paul Sorvino in a lot of trouble for doing it. But it's a really, I think, interesting episode with an interesting ethical quandary and a great guest performance. And again, it's not a holodeck episode, which is why I didn't go with Angel One.
Way better than Salieri.
Way better than Salieri.
Come on, kids love F. Murray Abraham.
Yeah. But I mean, isn't it true? Isn't Insurrection basically the same episode?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
A little bit,
yeah. And just not as good.
Just not as good. Yeah.
No. Okay.
Special effects aren't as good, that's for sure.
That was our honorary mentions. That was Kobayashi from Robert Meyer Burnett, Crisis Point from Ashley, Relics from Darren Doctorman, and not the original Star Trek tour in Ticonderoga from me, but in fact, Homeward from The Next Generation. Okay. So that only leaves one slot left. This is our number one pick for the top 10, or in this case, the number one Star Trek holodeck episode ever. And to reveal our choice, it's Ashley Edward Miller again.
So number one is it's a different sort of episode from the episodes that we've been talking about. This isn't about a fictional adventure or a holodeck gone wrong. It's not a story about someone trying to gaslight us with like a beautiful woman or a world that might seem like our own while we're being transported across the stars. It's about none of those things. It's from the 7th season of Deep Space Nine, episode 10. It's Only a Paper Moon.
Trapped in his own private hell.
Nog's lost a leg, and that's a traumatic experience.
Nog's final retreat.
I don't want to go back to my life.
Is into a world of pure fantasy.
You want to choose a holosuite program for your rehab?
Where the only reality...
Vic, he can't hide in here forever.
...is his own fear.
Nog, what's wrong with you?
I said, get out.
On the next Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
The premise of this episode is actually very simple. Nog, having lost his leg in combat 2 episodes earlier, the siege of AR-558, is just falling apart with PTSD, both from the experience of the fight, from losing his leg, from his recovery. And he slowly disappears into the world that is created around Vic Fontaine, because it is the one place where he can listen to music that takes his pain away. He listens to the same song over and over and over again. And he begins to live inside of it to the point that it becomes a problem. The stakes here aren't about the station. It's not about the war. It's about this kid in a brilliant performance by the late, great Aaron Eisenberg, who began life on this show as just the annoying Ferengi kid who Captain Sisko didn't want his son to play with. And now here he is carrying an episode on his own with another guest star, right? I almost said Jimmy Doohan. James Darren as Vic
Jimmy
Fontaine.
Doohan. I would have liked to have seen him in that episode. What would that have been like, Darren?
Good evening. I'm Vic Fontaine, and welcome to my show.
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly why you don't want that to happen. The other significant thing that happens in this episode that's interesting is if it is thematically about, a real life versus a virtual life that makes us feel better. What's happening at the same time that Nog has disappeared into this simulation that makes, all of the pain and the sort of the fear and the anxiety and the suffering go away. What's happening to Vic is equally significant and equally profound because Nog has allowed the holosuite to keep running constantly. The program is running day and night, and it's just consuming more memory. But Vic, in his own way, is becoming alive. The detail and reality and dimension is being added to his existence. In a way, Vic is born in this episode, and his relationship with Nog is incredibly significant and important. And what happens is important enough that the crew allow that simulation to keep running in the way that it is, because they learn that Vic is actually, in his own way, a valuable member of the crew. He might be the best counselor in the history of Star Trek. And by the way, 5 episodes later, it gets paid off in Bada Bing, Bada Bang, which we talked about in another one of our countdowns. Mm-hmm. And it's why there are stakes that are attached to that episode. But to bring it back to what really makes this episode sing is it is so raw, it's so emotional. It deals with consequences in a way that Star Trek has never dealt with them, I think, before. We've talked about them in terms of plot consequences. Certainly people have dealt with the emotional fallout of things that have happened to them. But other than Sisko's obvious PTSD, which he's working through a lot through the show, it's never been quite so pointed and poignant as it is here. The last thing I'll say about it is that it's one of those episodes when I saw it, when it first aired, that I really dug and I thought it was really excellent and really well done. But over time, it's an episode that I think has, it's stood the test of time differently. I think it's one of those things where you might not think about it in your, my top 100 lists of Star Trek episodes. But then you go back and you rewatch and you hit that episode and it knocks you on your ass and you realize, oh my God, this thing has just been sitting there. It's just been sitting there, this beautiful little gem that deserves all of the praise, I think, that we can heap on it.
Yeah. I got 2 things to say. I got one, Rob, is that a Warriors sweatshirt?
I believe that it is.
It is.
Whoa, that's cool, man.
But now you want to hear something even wilder?
Okay.
Yeah.
What's even wilder is that, I don't know if you know this, I don't know if I brought it up before, but Lin-Manuel Miranda has done a Warriors concept album.
Oh my God, really?
I'm not kidding. It's
wow.
a 2-disc.
When did that come out?
It came out last month.
Holy
and this was the merch. I'm not here to promote this necessarily, but this is wild. Not the least of which that they gender swapped the Warriors and the gang is now a gang of girls.
Oh, that's so cool. Paramount should do that. Why are they not making that into a movie?
I don't know, but the music's certainly cool.
Wow.
He took his shot.
And it's a star-studded production.
We got to get back to Yorktown.
That's right.
Yeah.
Funny.
But I have to say too, I want to say about to second what Ashley's saying. Here's another brilliant way to use the holodeck. I mean, Holo Pursuits, if Holo Pursuits laid the groundwork for doing this kind of thing, this episode pays it off in terms of there's just the emotional wallop that this packs. And, anybody, we always talk about in so many, especially genre shows lately, the writers have always, I think, are using people's trauma as a crutch now. It's almost a cliche. But back at the time when this episode came out in the late 90s, it is just a beautiful, earned. It uses the holodeck in such a way that it's so earned and it's so beautiful and it's so right. And it really is something that only Star Trek could do. Or other science fiction shows that delve into virtual realities and things like that. But
it's interesting because I want to answer
San Junipero and Black Mirror, maybe.
I've learned some really interesting things about Star Trek. Like, I know what Star Trek meant to us. It taught us how to be leaders. It taught us how to be a man. It taught us, a lot of good things, right? We learned from Star Trek, how to treat people with empathy, a lot of good, not to judge a book by its cover in a sense, to be, open to ideas, to fight against xenophobia, the importance of loyalty, friendship, all that stuff, right? What's really interesting is in doing research for my book, to hear all the veterans who watched this episode and to learn how it helped them process their PTSD and how much it meant to them, that goes far beyond the experience that we've had with Star Trek. The fact that this episode was so meaningful. It's the same thing I encountered with Voyager. I used to really like to criticize Voyager because I hated it so much. And then, I talked to all these women that talked about how much Catherine Janeway meant to them in terms of seeing a woman like them on the screen, inspired them to go into STEM, and how important it was to see this character. And I kind of laid off it after that to the extent that I could, because I realized that it was indeed, very important. And if it didn't speak to me, it spoke to other people in a very profound way. This is an example where it speaks to people in a profound way that I can't begin to imagine. And yet I really love it so much. And obviously it has extra resonance because, of course, we knew Aaron so well. Well, yeah. I shouldn't say so well, but we were friends with Aaron and spent that great time with him in France.
Yeah, we went to Paris, man, with them, with Rom and Nog.
Yeah, and Gene Roddenberry Jr. and Rod Roddenberry. But so to see, the sense of loss and him grappling with this and how it used something that could be as silly as like this Vegas. Because, originally this whole thing with Jimmy Darren just started as like, well, Ira Bear liked Sinatra. Ira Bear liked the Rat Pack. Ira Bear thought it'd be cool to have somebody singing these old and the deepness and the complexity of this character and particularly the storytelling. And in a way, there's another episode that's very meta because it shows a character trying to escape, Star Trek in the fantasy world, to escape the horrors that they've experienced. The way that Star Trek means so much to other people that escape into Star Trek to maybe escape things in their own life, an abusive parent or a sense of loss or whatever. So this is in a way the ultimate kind of Star Trek episode. And it's just so well done and so well written and so powerful. And, ultimately maybe traditional therapy doesn't work. Like Esri is not able to help him. It's Jimmy Darren's character who is really there ultimately to help him get through it. And it's just a really special episode, beautifully told. And the holodeck, it's not possible without the holodeck.
Yeah.
So terrific episode. It's our number one pick for the greatest holodeck episode of all time. And, again,
but that takes place on a hollow suite, so it really doesn't belong in the list.
I know we have to bifurcate our list. There's holodecks and hollow suite episodes. The two are very different. Very different. You can only imagine what Barclay was doing in the hollow suites. It's so funny because Deep Space Nine does not hide the fact we know what's going on. Right. Like Next Gen, they don't really, apply what's really, but in Deep Space, it's very clear, what's happening.
There's a lot of mopping up involved.
This is 1976 42nd Street. So it's crazy and it's great. And that's because, what was subtextual in other Star Trek, Deep Space Nine always made overt. you know, and that was one of the things that was great about Deep Space Nine. And I think this was a great list, guys.
Me too.
I think
it was a good list.
We'll let the viewers tell us.
A lot of great entries.
Yeah. And maybe some unexpected choices.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know. I think it was good.
I can't think of anything great that we missed.
I know. It's true.
I think of some terrible things that we.
It's true. And the great news is we got 6 more of these crazy Fakakta holiday specials coming up. This is only our 4th. We do 6 more.
6 more holodeck lists.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. We're doing 100 greatest holodeck
100 greatest holodeck episodes.
There's only 4 weeks left of this year.
Well, we always go deep into Arbor Day
with
these lists. We never finish it by the end of the year.
That's right. This is a
Rob,
quarter of our programming every year. What are you talking about?
We're as always, we're delighted to have you with us. And of course, Rob's new audio drama, True Noir, is out now. Tell us how the fans can order that.
Well, you'll be able to get it anywhere you get your premium podcasts. Of course, as far as Star Trek alumni go, we've got Bill Sadler, who played Sloan. Jeffrey Combs plays Mayor Anton Cermak. If you like Battlestar Galactica, Katie Sackhoff plays Michael Rosenbaum's love interest. Michael Rosenbaum is the star. C. Thomas Howell is in it. Barry Bostwick from Megaforce and Rocky Horror Picture Show is in it. Vincent Pastore from The Sopranos is in it. David Strathairn is in it. So it's quite the cast.
That is an impressive ensemble. And if you know, if listening to us once a week on this podcast is enough, you can listen to Rob Burnett every day,
almost,
including Christmas. How do they do that,
being
Rob?
married to him.
Also, I just want to point out that Bill Smitrovich, also from the 2-part Deep Space Nine episode Past Tense, is also in the audio drama.
It's a gaggle of greats.
Yeah.
So you can join Rob in the Observatory every day on the Burnettwork. Check that out on YouTube. But Rob will be with us for the next couple of weeks, for better or for worse. As we cut through, I don't mean for us, for you. I mean, you got to deal with all this nonsense. You know, and hours upon hours of chattering about this stuff. And we got some really special episodes coming up. And as we count down to the very end of the year, we want to thank you for being a part of this podcast. Of course, you can share your thoughts at treksperts@gmail.com or on all your favorite social channels. We now are, in addition to I was going to say Instacart. We order groceries. But in addition to Instagram and X, Twitter, and Facebook, we are now on Blue Sky as well, because we are not leaving Twitter, but there's been a mass exodus of people to Blue Sky. So we decided to put down the golden spike in Blue Sky as well. So you can, if you're not on Twitter anymore and you want to follow us on Blue Sky, we'd love to have you join the expedition. And on that note, can we be done now? Can I call it? Okay, thank you.
The word is given, Admiral.
Fantastic. Okay, so on behalf of Robert Meyer Burnett, Ashley Edward Miller, Darren R. Doctorman. What does the R stand for, Darren?
Stands for Ross.
Ross. Darren, you know, that was my dad's middle name. I did not know that. I can't believe I never asked you what your middle name was. Darren R. Doctorman and myself, Mark A. Altman. Keep on trekking, ingloriously, of course, and happy holidays.
Shh.